loved the story that as a child, given the job to collect the palm fronds or bathwater, it was 3 big rocks, the pot, and that would be used as the fuel to heat the bathwater.
Next group, what was your principle? What example do you have?
So it was a catch and hold energy. So one of the things I didn't mention is we have gone solar. So we have a solar set of cells getting energy, and well, I should probably start with the pond. Here's a pond. Fish need oxygen, so you have to have, we put a little rock garden, and we have motors that recycle the water. And from the solar field, electricity feeds the pump that recycles the water, that helps you put fish. And there's a pond at a higher ground than the apple trees, so we can feed the water from the pond to the apple trees if we need it.
And I get some reflected glory from that, because we partnered.
Nice job, Suresh.
What was it?
Obtaining yield.
Obtaining a yield. You do not want to work with an empty stomach. So we created the seasons, and it's the idea that you don't want to put all your work into one thing, so you got to think long term, whatever you're doing. For example, like you want to think of preservation of your crops so you can eat throughout the winter and into the spring. You want to spread out your work so you're not overloaded at one time and things of that nature. And also incorporate the community, so in case something happens, you have a backup plan all the time and things like that.
We also talked about having crops that can be harvested in as many times of the year as possible. So some crops that are early spring, like different types of leafy vegetables like spinach or lettuces, rhubarb, and then crops throughout the summer and then into the fall. And having every member in the community having a different job to do and working together, so that if one person's work fails for the year, maybe their crop didn't come up, they're supported still by the rest of the community.
Feedback. So we drew a picture of a before and after of our backyard. And so, I don't know if you can see, but like the one on the right? Right? Yeah. That's all straight, and that's the way our backyard looks like right now. Okay. And then the one on the left is we're applying the self-regulation of, I hope we're getting this right, but we're cutting down overgrown plants that aren't working together. We're increasing the edges. So we're making a plan. We're looking at plant guilds. That was kind of what we decided to focus on. And so we looked at maybe making groupings of a dwarf tree, a shrub, a native plant, and then an annual vegetable. Those would be the groupings that would work together. We're already finding out, because we have already started this, that it accidentally worked together that way, but there's one plant that's acting kind of naughty and taking over the other one, so we like it, so we're gonna move it to other places. And the, you can jump at any time, Therese. The feedback would be, accepting feedback is like, we have neighbors, because our lot is very small and it runs all along my neighbor's driveway. So we want to make sure that he's happy. We don't have plants kind of leaning over his new fence and falling into his yard. So, if he has feedback saying, I don't really like this here, we need to be willing to modify. And
feedback from others, like just people who know what they're talking about, so not necessarily the neighbor's needs, but also the feedback from others who actually understand what's going on.
Right. And then we incorporated what you said about earth care, people care, and fair share. So, and that's part of the feedback too. So it's an ongoing dynamic thing. We have to be open to change.
Use and value renewable resources, let nature take its course. And so we didn't really draw much, but what we did was we kind of talked it out and figured out what that actually meant, because I had a hard time grasping that concept. And what we came up with was, you know, as Lydia was talking about her Seva, how what we can do here, now that she's living here, to continue her Seva, but actually expand it out to more and more people. And what happened was I had this flash of inspiration, I'm sure it was inspiration or whatever you want to call it, where we talked about how the ripple effect, like when you touch one, you touch many. And so Lydia's Seva is clothing.
What's Seva? So most people don't know what to say. I know what
Oh,
it is.
Seva is selfless service. And so one of the things you're in charge of is clothing. And so we talked about what could we do at the ashram to create renewable resources. And I was like, wow, we could plant, you know, I don't know how cotton will grow here because it's not the South or anything, but linen. And we said we could have sheep here and then use the wool. And then I said, oh my gosh, there's all these trees we had to cut down. We could build our own spinning wheel and our own looms and create yarn and fabric and then have that what we create from that in clothing and sell that and that all becomes self-sustainable. And then we also talked about how you know, we're going to grow a lot of food, and the food is going to help feed people in this area that are really, I mean, the food pantries are really hurting for food. And what do they get? All this processed food that has a lot of chemicals and just nasty stuff in it that's not really feeding someone. It's not helping them be healthy and to be able to become a productive member of society. And so growing organic food and getting that surplus also to the food pantries and stuff will help people. You know, it's not just those people that are hungry, it's their kids, and it goes on generation after generation. So we had a real deep discussion about all of that, and that's kind of what came out of that. And so it just, what we do is beneficial not just to one, but it grows exponentially. And that's how you change the world, because you start with the one and then it just grows and grows and grows.
From patterns to details. So I got inspired off of what he said in his PowerPoint, and how instead of creating a round pond, you can make it in a weird shape like that, so that you can grow more. So you can use that pattern, and then you could actually build off of that, and then you could have different types of plants in there, so you create diversity in them. And then it's kind of sad that I don't really know a lot of plants. I mean, that's why I said water-loving plants here instead of actually listing them out. And then on the left side of it, I drew a little path, like in his PowerPoint, he showed us how they used the same concept to create more plants in one portion. And then I was thinking about how if my dad, he has like a small garden or vegetables and everything in his backyard, but then he made it so that it's like a square, and then you can't really get inside and take care of each different plants individually. So he has he just has to water them, but he can't really take care of them that much. But if he actually built, or if he had a path that went around it, or inside through it, like in the picture that he showed of the ashram plants, then it would have been better, because you could have utilized that space in a creative way. But then it's going to look good, and it's going to be more efficient, so that you can actually watch the plants grow, and you can take care of them and everything like that. So you can use patterns to contribute to the environment going on. And then here in the water itself, you can have different types of plants, and like lotuses, water lilies, so that it looks good, and it's gonna help the biological system in there. So I was just exploring that.
Integrate rather than segregate. And what we came up with My partner was sharing how when she boils rice, I don't understand this exactly, but
You can use the
She has rice
organic,
water.
you know, organic waste material from your kitchen, like rice water left, and the green tea leaves. You can use it for the to feed the plants. You can use the deck to plant, use pots
Yeah.
and plant it there. So you can use it in the zone, you said, zone 1. And it's easy, you can grow a lot of vegetables there.
so we were putting plants in pots on the deck so the deer don't eat them. So we're sort of integrating like the yard onto the deck instead of just having a deck and then a yard beyond. And then at the same time, she's using some of her kitchen waste water to water these plants and also fertilize them with some of the stuff. That was
Small and slow solutions. The one concept, there was a picture of the mushrooms on there, learning a little more about the mushrooms was to plant the mushrooms like around the small forested areas, the trees, the bushes. And they do, those little organisms do a great job. And the same thing like with the worm composting, having a compost, but also, using those little organisms to break down that compost, then use the worm castings to then feed your garden.
I don't know if this is against the permaculture concept too much, but we've been talking about trying to get some kind of a greenhouse, and which should be probably wouldn't be too hard to build or something, or maybe we have to buy something. And then we thought the other day, we're going to be replacing a lot of windows in the houses over here. So we can take out those panes of glass and build like a frame, and instead of having a big greenhouse, we can have what's called a hot box, and just, designate almost like a raised bed garden and put, build a little frame and have a little, use those panes of glass to have something rather than something greenhouse that you have to walk into or something, just do it on a smaller scale.
There's some wood also from the trees that fell down, that has been cut up, and it's in some of the warehouses here.
Right.
The properties, you can use that, so then go buy wood for that frame.
Yeah, might have to borrow John's song.
I was gonna say, you're gonna need a good saw for that one.
Rules or techniques or things you absolutely have to do, you're not like, if you don't do an herb spiral or you don't have a swale, it doesn't mean you're not a permaculturist or you're not doing permaculture. It's this collection of ethically based thought process where you're thinking about your role in nature and how you can fulfill as many of these principles as possible when you're thinking about how you're going to design something and how many of those core functions you can satisfy. So we're gonna shift a little bit and do a pretty fast overview of some of the methods of permaculture design. Okay, so we have these principles, we have this great way of thinking about nature and mimicking nature, but how do we translate that into a real practical plan of like, okay, we've got 140 acres here, or we have 1/10 of an acre